Is a narcissist torturing you and you're sitting over there trying to figure out how can I make their life just as miserable as they are making mine, or maybe even worse? I'm going to give you 5 ways in this video. We're going to go through 5 ways to torture a narcissist. Now, I have to give you a little bit of a caveat here because I don't want to put you in any sort of danger, and I don't want you to put yourself in any sort of danger here. So what I'm going to walk through here is stuff that's going to really drive them crazy. It's stuff that's going to make them collapse, go nuts, and really put you in a position of power. And that's really what it's all about, right? Giving you that sense of authentic power, putting you in a place where you can shift that dynamic, turn it all around so that you're on the offensive for a change instead of constantly being on the defensive. And that's what I want you to learn how to do, because they've been conditioning you from the beginning, whether it's a family relationship, whether it's a personal relationship, a professional relationship, whatever it is, you're constantly being conditioned. In a lot of ways, it's almost like a frog with that slow boil. Do you ever hear that analogy of the frog who's sitting in that pot of cold water and they don't even realize that the heat's being turned up so they don't ever jump out because they're still in it? Or the analogy of death by 1,000 cuts, like these little tiny paper cuts, and all of a sudden you just like have so many you don't even realize it. Sort of like that. You're over there kind of realizing, oh my gosh, how did I get into this thing? How do I get out of it? What I want you to do is turn it around in baby steps, and you're going to figure out how to torture that narcissist in a way that they're going to go, how did this happen to me? If you haven't subscribed here to this channel, I invite you to do that now, because every single day I am releasing brand new videos to give you free information, free content that will help you get on the path to freedom, your path to going from drama, trauma, and chaos to that life of freedom, to that life of having that power that you want to have. The first thing that you want to make sure that you do is not take that bait. You don't want to have that emotional manipulation going on constantly, because if you do, what happens is they go fishing. And that gives them the supply source that they want. So the first thing you got to do is cut off that supply source. So I always say step 1, don't run. Step 2, make a U-turn. Step 3, break free. So the first thing that you can do is put that emotional shield down around you, that invisible shield. You can start look at them as if they are a third party having a tantrum on the floor, and just look at them and start to say things almost like as if you are observing them. I can see that you are upset. I can see that you are angry. Demand respect for yourself. This approach is not working for me. Thank you for the feedback. Start to hold it all at bay, because you're no longer emotionally triggered by the process anymore. So you're not going to take the bait. They go fishing and then they reel you in. And then once you're in, you're stuck. You're down in that mud with them. And now they've triggered you and they know exactly how to trigger you. They go for those weak spots and then they have you, you're in. And as long as they're getting that narcissistic supply, that hookup, then they will never leave you alone. And so if you want to start to torture that narcissist, that very first way to torture a narcissist is to put on that shield and not take the bait. That's number 1. Number 2 is shut down the gaslighting. How do you shut down gaslighting? You go, that's not how that happened. That's not how I remember it. We didn't have that conversation. That's not a funny joke. The things that they do that are gaslighting. So what is gaslighting? Gaslighting is things that they do or things that they say to try to make you think that you're crazy. Oh, we didn't have that conversation. Or we had that conversation, don't you remember? Or you're misremembering the facts or whatever. They try to destabilize you or make you think that you're crazy by literally changing the facts. Why do they do that? Well, to destabilize you, and also because they're trying to get out of responsibilities, or they're trying to just lie about things because they are being accused of things that they did do, they didn't do, and they're trying to get out of it. Or they just think it's funny to make fun of you and get supply from that. I mean, there's a whole host of reasons why they gaslight, but regardless, you don't want to be their supply source. So you have to shut that down. You can also document things and keep track. And that also shuts down the gaslighting. So that's number two. And I teach you how to do that in my programs and the things that I do, but that also helps you. Okay. The next thing is gray rocking. Gray rocking, short responses. No. Yes. Uh-huh. You know what a gray rocking is? It's just sort of like you become a gray rock. Very boring. Just, yeah. You're not emotional. You're just so boring. You don't even have expression on your face. Just very brief, short, unemotional. Just pretend like you're reporting the news. Oh, I see. I always tell people never jade, never justify, argue, defend, or explain. I always say I love jade because, I'm half Chinese and all of that, but don't justify, argue, defend, or explain. Never in the history of any narcissist ever has one gone, oh, you know what? I see your point. I get it now. Oh, you've really convinced me. Like, they're never going to come over to your side there. So no response, short responses, gray rock. Got it so far? If you got it so far, put got it in the comments below. Got it. Got it. So these are ways we're torturing narcissists here. And if you are needing extra support, join my free private Facebook group, Narcissist Negotiators with Rebecca Zung. That will help you tremendously, and you'll get extra support there. If you want extra help in documenting narcissists, I have a freebie for you. It's docthenarc.com, docthenarc.com. It'll tell you exactly what to document there. So just go grab that, docthenarc.com. The next thing is exposing them. That's how you build your leverage, is starting to expose them. You have to threaten a source of supply that's more important for them to keep, protect, to defend. All of that diamond level supply is what I teach you how to do in my high conflict negotiation certification programs or my slave programs, how to threaten that source of supply they want to keep, that's more important. And then they'll let go of that source of supply, that coal level supply that's manipulating you, jerking you around, talking about you behind your back, all of that stuff, the flying monkeys. They will let go of all of that if you sort of threaten a source of supply ethically, manipulate a source of supply that's more important for them to keep than the supply that they get from manipulating you. So expose them. We've gone through 4 so far. We've gone through what? Don't take the bait, shut down the gaslighting, gray rock, short responses, or potentially expose them. And we've got one more, number 5. You ready for it? Ready for it? Number 5 is move on and forget about them. I recognize that is way easier said than done, but if you can do all the other things that I am teaching you how to do, then you can get to a point of being able to do number 5. And you can go, do the hair toss, check your nails, the whole Lizzo thing, and move on and say, see ya. It's been real, but see you later. Later, dude or girl or whatever it is. Send them light. I always say send them light, but over there. That's what you do. I do want to say before we dive in that you want to make sure that you never put yourself in any sort of danger. So if you are feeling like you are in any sort of danger, please don't put yourself there. The point of this video is to hurt them in a way that is going to push them out of your life so that you can break free, so that you can walk away, so that you can erase them from your memory, so that you can erase them from your life. The real pain for them is to be erased. That's kind of the end game here. So how do you get there? How do you move toward that place, right? Because you're the one who constantly feels like this ain't fair. How's this happening. Everyone's believing their lies. They constantly get away with everything. Believe me, I know. I hear it all the time. I hear the pain. I hear the constant feeling of you're on the defense and you want to know, how do I get on the offense? By the way, if you haven't subscribed here, I invite you to do that now. Subscribe, hit that notification bell. If you want phrases for disarming narcissists, go ahead and grab my free phrases for disarming narcissists at disarmthenarc.com. They'll help you in any situation as well. And I'm Rebecca Zung. I've written a best-selling book, USA Today #1 best-selling book, Slay the Bully: How to Negotiate with a Narcissist and Win. And I invite you to grab that too. How do you hurt a narcissist forever? Well, the first step for doing that is to create these super strong boundaries. Narcissists will push your boundaries. They're going to push your buttons. They're going to do everything they can to push your buttons. They get supply from that. What is supply? Supply is anything that feeds this deep, dark hole that's inside of them. They feel like they have no inherent value. So they have to get all of their value from external sources. I always say they're like that chocolate Easter bunny that looks really nice on the outside, but on the inside, there's nothing going on. It's totally hollow inside. At least that's how they feel. They look beautiful when they first come around, but as soon as you see what's going on inside, there's nothing there. They don't feel anything. There's no heart there. In fact, they take cues from other people on how they're supposed to look as far as what it looks like to care. It's like they don't actually feel the care. They just know what it looks like to pretend to care. That's not caring. They thrive on this manipulation. They thrive on control. But they also thrive on image. What do they look like to the world? So I always say there's two forms of supply: diamond level supply, which is their image, how they look to the world, and then what I call coal level supply, which is manipulation and control. Now, it's really important that you understand those two different tiers of supply, because one is going to definitely be more important than the other. And you can hurt them on the diamond level supply more than you can hurt them on the coal level supply. Although they love both, they definitely love both and they want to keep both. But that manipulation, that control, that pick, that I want to get you, I want to manipulate you, that is less important than their image. Their image is going to be their all important thing. So, what do I mean by that? Well, setting firm boundaries, that's going to be the very first thing that you can do to protect yourself. So, you're going to want to do that first and foremost, to just start the process of you healing and stopping the conditioning and shutting off that first form of supply for them, and also for you to stop that conditioning process and you to stop this pushing against you. It's you starting to say, I'm not going to be manipulated. It's you starting to say, I'm demanding respect for myself. And it's you just starting one little baby step. So just putting that invisible boundary down around you and saying, I'm demanding that I get to be spoken to with respect. No matter who you are, no matter what situation you're in, I don't care if it's your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother, your boss, your colleague, no matter who it is, you get to be treated with respect. Start just imagining that they're a toddler having a tantrum on the floor. And just when they get upset, when they get angry, just say, I can see that you're upset. I can see that you're angry. We can resume this conversation when you've calmed down, when you can be rational, whatever words feel comfortable to you. But you can say, this approach is not working for me. This conversation doesn't work for me. You can just walk away at that point. And if they don't like it, that's okay. But you don't need to remain in conversation where you're being degraded, where you're being harassed, where somebody is putting you down. No, you don't. Absolutely never. And if somebody puts you down, or if somebody says something to you that is hurtful or whatever, you don't need to say anything back. You don't need to say anything. You can just say, thank you for the feedback. But never justify, argue, defend, or explain. I always say never jade. I always say I love jade. I'm half Chinese, so I always wear jade, but never jade. Why? Because you're never going to get a narcissist to go, oh, you know what? I thought about what you said, and huh, I'm really feeling enlightened now. I've really come to believe that you're right. That's never happening. Ever. It's never happened in the history of the world of narcissists. If you ever do get them ever to say anything like that, it's because they're manipulating you. Don't bother. Just don't justify, argue, defend, or explain. First thing, set firm boundaries. The second thing you want to do is then focus on yourself. Focus on your personal growth, focus on your success, focus on who you want to be for yourself, not looking to them to validate you, not looking to them to support you, not looking to them to give you anything that you are going to need for yourself, because you're not going to get it from them. It's not happening from that section of your world. They want attention for themselves. They want validation from you flowing in that direction. So if you want to start shifting it this direction, it's not happening for you. You need to pursue your passions and focusing on whatever it is that makes you happy, whether it's your career, your hobbies, your children, your family, your friends, whatever it is that is your thing. Do you nurture meaningful relationships that matter to you? Prioritize your own happiness, prioritize your own joy. That will be ultimately the thing that will serve you, and it will be a potent form of self protection down the road. It will definitely hurt that narcissist because they'll see that you're moving on, that you don't need them anymore, that you don't care so much about what they think or they matter so much. And it will hurt them. Focus on you. In the comments, I want you to write, I'm focusing on me. Put that in the comments below. I'm focusing on me. And if you need extra support, join my free private Facebook group, Narcissist Negotiators with Rebecca Zung. It's a great place for support. Lots of great people in there supporting each other. And I want to know, what boundary setting techniques are you going to employ? Which ones have you found to be effective too? I want to know that in the comments as well. So just drop a comment below and let us know. We are a community here and we're helping each other out. So drop a comment below and let us know. Tell us your story and share your insights. Share your insights with the rest of us so that we can learn from each other's experiences here. So another strategy in all of this is prioritizing your emotional well-being. So getting support from others. What does that mean? It might mean therapy. It might mean joining a support group. It might mean going to get help from a pastor or your synagogue or wherever it is that you go. What does a narcissist not want you to do? Have anybody other than them. They definitely want to isolate you and not want to see you go to people outside of their world. But when you're dealing with a narcissist, it's extremely emotionally draining and traumatizing. It's so toxic. So you really do need to incorporate these sorts of things into your routine and then start thinking about healing. What are you going to do to heal yourself? Is it going to be breathing techniques, exercise, yoga, all part of your therapy, right? Mindfulness, all of this is healing from that toxicity. The more they see that you are taking care of yourself, self-care, pursuing your passions, moving on, creating boundaries, it will definitely hurt a narcissist forever. And the last thing is creating a strategy that includes leverage. That's all part of my SLAY strategy that will expose a narcissist and expose their true nature, that diamond level supply, to others. They have a very carefully crafted facade to maintain that image and shedding light on their manipulative behavior or bad things that they've done or their lies or their porn addiction or they've committed domestic violence or that they're a cheater or whatever it is can be incredibly damaging to them. And hey, if they didn't want you to tell it, then they shouldn't have done it. Seeking support, exposing their true colors, getting what you want done. Those are the things that you can do to hurt a narcissist forever. Powerful strategies. You first actually came into the news during 9/11. And talk about that. You were holding a picture of your fiance and what happened there.
Yeah, I mean, I was 26 years old. I was working at Bloomberg News, and I was engaged to a guy I'd been dating for 3 years. His name was James Andy O'Grady. He went by Andy, and he was at work that day. I went into work at 5 a.m. He went into work at 6:30. Probably we had just gotten back from Greece, so we were up really early. And he was killed in the World Trade Center. And that photo that became it was known as New York's tragic face. It's in some museums, and it was in almost on the cover of almost every newspaper in the world. A couple days after September 11th, was taken when I was at Bellevue Hospital searching for Andy. They had said that his name was on a list of one of the people that was found. They kept making mistakes, so that was actually common. So people would line up at hospitals, check to see if their loved one's name was on the list. Everyone would be told no, and then they'd walk away. So that was where that photo was taken when I was at Bellevue.
Hmm. And you ended up taking like a month off to find him or something, right?
Yeah, I mean, listen, so September 11th was a Tuesday. By Sunday, I was asked to be on Fox News, and I did an interview with them. And I remember them asking me, as this 26-year-old girl who had just lost the love of her life and had no information, like didn't know. And people are still talking about like having hope. And I remember them saying, well, do you think that he's still alive under the rubble? And I remember thinking, like, hope is the thing that kills you, kind of, like, no, I'm smarter than that. If you look at what happened, there's no way that he is alive. And for me to hold out hope would just be stupid. So I didn't search for him for a month, but I definitely had to take a month off to like figure out how to like breathe, kind of. Again, it was all very surreal. And I will say it was not as hard the first month because everyone was going through it, and there was so many questions, and that was the only thing that anyone was talking about. So I didn't feel alone in losing him. The worst part was when everyone left. Like, I didn't spend one night alone for a month. Like, my mom was there, my two friends were there, my best friends at the time, and his friends were always over, and the phone was always ringing. But it gets lonely when the phone stops ringing, when everyone else goes back to their life. So I went back to work, and it was really hard for me to go back to work because everyone was like going about their life like nothing happened, when my life was totally changed. So yeah, obviously that was something that affected me forever. It's like in my bones. It's something that it'll never the pain will never diminish from how I feel.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. So then from there, you decided to get married.
About a year or 2 years later, maybe. I'm trying to remember the date, actually. So I ended up marrying a childhood friend who had had a similar story. He worked in finance, but he happened to be at Cantor Fitzgerald that day, and had an early interview because he was trying to interview before, so he could go before work, so his work wouldn't know that he was interviewing. And he had just gotten out of the elevator when the plane struck everyone that he had the meeting with that morning. So we hadn't spoken since we were like 14 years old. Somehow we connected later, like maybe a year later, we connected about our stories, and we became best friends. And I ended up marrying him literally as a friend. Like, we really were very platonic. It was weird. And I thought that might be the right way to marry someone, like, just to not not be vulnerable enough where I was completely in love with them, right? Because I was so scared of losing someone. I had already lost my father when I was 15 years old. He was 44. He had died of a cocaine addiction. Then I lose Andy, who was like, the guy who loves me unconditionally. And so I think the next time around, I was like, okay, I'm not going to put everything into this person. So a year after marrying him, I think that's so September 11th. I think I married him 3 years later. So I think that I a year later I said I think we should get a divorce. That I want a love story, and this is not it. We're just friends. So I remember reading about that in the paper, and it said something like, "Oh, I couldn't even keep the marriage lasting or whatever." But that wasn't true. It was just we were friends. We weren't meant to be married.
Mm. And so, do you think that you were trying to like heal yourself or something like that? I mean, what do you think that you were like?
I think in that circumstance, I just felt very close to him and felt like he had gone through something that no other people had been through, even though he didn't lose, he lost people that he knew, of course, but he was there that day. I don't know. I just felt very close. Plus, I knew him from my childhood. So I just felt a bond with him.
Mm,
But, after that relationship is where I've kind of gone awry. I mean, that one obviously didn't work out, but, I've picked different people. I think my self-worth every time went lower and lower, but at the same time, my belief that men would stay because of a choice or because of something terrible that happened was like, off the rails. I didn't really know what was true. And I think, it's so interesting. I'm 49 years old. I have not been remarried. I have a child with someone. Who is a very difficult relationship, even though I was only with them for 2 years or whatever. And I've had many relationships since. And I have a bad picker. Since
mm,
that occasion, I have made terrible decisions based on people who give me credibility, I think, in my eyes, picking very powerful men. And if everyone in the room wants to know them and they want to know me and they want to, they love me, then I must be worthy. So that's how I justified who I was with. And then when you pick people like that are powerful, you tend to get people that have narcissistic personality traits. Some of them may be diagnosed with it if they actually took the time to, go see someone, but a lot of them just haven't been diagnosed, but really possess these traits where, you know, they have so many traits that they consume you with. You lose your sense of self because you remember what it was like when you first met and how intoxicating that was and how it made you feel, and then they make you feel the pendulum swing of the complete opposite and terrible, but you almost can't be without them because they convince you that you're nobody without them, and where do you think you're going, and you convince yourself that no one else will want you and this is as good as it's going to get. And when he's great. When he's bad, he's terrible. So there are so many, aspects to that. And the gaslighting is terrible. And but I think subconsciously too, I've had a history of growing up with a narcissistic mother. And so I think that I am used to that kind of relationship and that kind of chaos and that kind of interaction back and forth and that like 0 to 100 in anger and negativity and verbal abuse in some ways, emotional abuse. So I hate saying it felt comfortable, but it
it's
almost felt,
familiar. It's
yeah,
familiar.
familiar. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
sorry to interrupt you. It almost felt like that's what I assumed love was. Because if some guy wasn't going like this up and down with me, if they were like, straight arrow, there was no emotion. That's how I read it, that they must not love me if they're not being passionate and there's no pull and push and tug and breaking up and making up and calling me names and then being like, oh, I love you so much. I can't live without you. So, I think if I didn't possess that in a relationship, I thought there was something wrong with it.
mm, so insightful. I mean, you actually went on Celebrity Rehab because Dr. Drew said that you were a love addict.
Yeah. So I had never heard that term. And I remember when he came to me and asked me to be on the show, I was asked by Donald Trump to be on The Apprentice. And I said yes, because I really wanted people to get to know who I was. But as it got closer, I got very nervous about how I would be edited. I thought that it could go really negatively. but I wanted to do it because I was able to, I forget what the word is, play or whatever. My cause was for the Red Cross, and to me that was a big deal. And Donald had told me that nobody had used it as a charity, and because of September 11th and what they had done for me after I lost my fiance, they gave me $100,000 for me to move out of my apartment and put towards an apartment to buy for me, which was amazing. I mean, it saved my life. So because my apartment was like kicking me out because I couldn't pay the rent because my fiance was paying the rent, like it was just weird. But anyway, I really wanted to do The Apprentice, and Dr. Drew came and said, I think you should be on my show. I said, but I'm not an addict. And he said, well, you are, you're a love addict. So when he explained it to me and I started to understand what it was, and I started to, and I sat with Drew, and felt this connection to Drew, and I felt seen. I was like, there's no way that I don't need this for real. So I went into that show taking it completely seriously. And I will say, for people that don't believe that reality shows are real, I don't know about other ones. I've only been on Millionaire Matchmaker, which was not real, I can say, but Celebrity Rehab was completely real. The 8 people that I was there with were going through withdrawals. They were trying to get through their traumas for those 30 days. I think we filmed for 21. So for those 21 days, we were taking it very seriously, even though the cameras were there. And 2 people out of the 8 have actually died since from drug overdoses, which is terrible. But I remember thinking, oh, everyone's here for the money. But then after I was in it for a while, I said, but who gives a shit? It might have been what took them to get off the drugs to come here, but they were really doing the work. So I appreciated being on that show, and I got to learn a lot about love addiction, and I dealt with a lot of the loss in my life and why I make choices based on the trauma I had from relationships in my childhood. And I went on tour with Dr. Drew a little bit, and we went on the Joy Behar show and all sorts of shows talking about love addiction and trying to bring awareness to it.
Do you think that it helped you? Do you feel like?
For sure. I mean, I think it's become more of a, people know the term now. Back then I was like, wait a minute, you mean sex addict? Like, I didn't know the difference. I didn't really know what that was. So yeah, I learned a lot from it. I feel like I still call upon it today. The tools that I have learned from doing so much work with it, the books I've read on it. I think, anyone who's not familiar with love addiction should, it's basically in simplest form, people that replace love for intensity. And so, they think that this intense relationship is really love when it's really toxic, and it makes you lose your sense of self, and you're like addicted to this toxicity, and the ups and downs. So, I appreciated everything that I learned from it. And again, I mean, I still have all the books on my shelf in my office here that I've had for years. And once in a while I'll flip through them, and I recommend them to my friends all the time because I know so many girls who can't get through a day when they're going through a breakup or something in their relationship. And I'm always like, okay, you're acting like a little bit of a love addict right now. Let's look at this and why you're acting this way.
So what are some of the things that you learned?
Well, I learned how to identify, some of the traits. I learned, who preys on love addicts. It's, I learned a lot about the attachment, and, what we fear as somebody abandoning us is usually, what ends up happening because we pick the wrong people who are usually love addicts, pick sex addicts or some other addicts, right? And then we feel this hole is filled by them, and then when that hole is empty, we try and get them back so bad because we think that we need them. And also the concept of, somebody will appear in your life and it's almost like you put a mask over their head. You don't listen to anything that they're saying. You don't see their red flags or green flags. You just superimpose what you assume to be what you need, right? So I think a lot of people do this on dating apps. They'll see a picture and they'll see a name and they'll see where they live. And they might be like, oh my God, this one is the one. And they'll like come up with an idea of who they think the person is, right? And then as they date them and time goes on, they get disappointed by things that maybe they really shouldn't because they superimpose that on that person and that was never who that person was. So I think there's a lot of that goes on. But when you get to a point that you cannot function in your day, in your work, in your parenting, because you're so consumed by your relationship, that's when you need to take a step back and, look within yourself to figure out why your sense of happiness and worth is based on the way someone else is interacting with you.
So what do you do at that point? Give us some of the tools that you learned.
So basically, I mean, I think that it's important to start to look within. Like when you're in that position, I think so many people are going outwards and trying to get that person back instead of thinking, why do I need that person in my life? Why am I aching so much just to get their approval? Instead, it's about taking that time to understand, to break that cycle. And that's the biggest thing, the cycle that happens, where it's a pull and push and pull. It can happen in domestic violence, it can happen in relationships, and it can happen in narcissistic abuse relationships as well. Because you are scared of the abandonment, and so you pull person in, and that makes the person run, and then you try and pull them back, and it's this terrible cycle. And once you break the cycle and you spend time working on yourself and thinking about ways that you can be secure in yourself, that's the only way you can have a real relationship. So for me, the tools are when I realize, like recently I met someone online and I started to date them, and he checked, when people ask me why, oh my God, I really like this guy, and they'd say, why? Well, he checks all these boxes. Okay, well, after 4 months, I really didn't know anything about him. Like I'm telling you now, like I thought maybe 4 days ago I was like in love with this person. I couldn't tell you one thing about them because, I superimposed all these things on him, and I started to realize I'm becoming a love addict. I'm addicted to the feeling of being in love when I don't even know if this person is worthy of my love, right? Or worthy of me. And it's those feelings of like, oh my God, this person knows me so well. And, we just feel like we knew each other in another life and we're so bonded to each other. Well, that's not healthy because they need to get to know you. They need to understand who you are as a person. Sometimes you don't even understand who you are as a person. So it's important to keep your identity while you date someone else. Because if you lose your identity, it's just going to be a whole mess. And your happiness, I mean, that's the thing that I want to stress. Your own happiness has to derive from you and your life. Otherwise, you will end up ultimately being unhappy, even if you pick a great partner, because they can't always make you happy. They're not always going to be in a great state in their own sense of self, So I think it all starts, to answer your question, with you and taking a step back and realizing, like, what do I need to do to be in a happy place in my life and not keep like trying to find the love or the attachment or the fulfilling things from other people. And so anyway, this guy kept kind of, not having meaningful conversations with me and just wanting to get close physically and, doing things that were red flags. And finally I said to him, I couldn't even get him to call me, and I finally said, listen, and this to me was a big step, and it reminded me of something that I read in one of my books, that you have to have boundaries. Like that was the biggest thing. And I said, listen, I know my worth. I got a little carried away here that, we took it this far. I think that you must be a nice guy, but I'm really not bringing out qualities in you that are important to me, which is great communication skills and being reliable. And that's not happening here. So I want a love story, and I don't think this is it. So, good luck. And if it had been the right person, he would have come back and said, oh my God, you're misreading this. I'm so sorry. I didn't know you felt this way or whatever. But he didn't. And for a second, I was like, it was a little bit painful that he was like, okay, good luck to you too. But at the same time, I was like, okay, wait, I just stood up for myself. I stood up for, what I thought was important and what I want. And everyone should know what is important to them and not settle for something that they, cannot settle for, because that is ultimately what's going to make you happy and be an equal in a relationship. I'm very happy in my job. I'm very happy in my home. I'm very happy with my rescue dogs. I'm happy with my daughter, obviously. The one thing that's missing is a relationship. I just have to realize and keep reminding myself that, it has to work in my life. I'm not going to work in their life. That's just not where I am in my stage. Like, I want to make sure that we come together and we can share lives, but like, I'm not going to change I'm 49 years old. I'm not changing something about me to go be with someone else. I am very happy with where I am. I just want someone who can contribute to that happiness, and make it even better.
That's so beautifully said. I
Oh, thanks.
love that. So good. I love, love, love that. And I hope everybody who's listening to this goes back and re-listens to that because it was so beautifully said. So good.
Thanks.
So good. And so it's really truly finding that authentic version of yourself and breaking that trauma bond because it
Mm,
really is a trauma bond. And I
right.
want to just go back to what you were talking about, that push, pull, because there is a dopamine addiction that happens in your brain. And I
Mm,
just want to make sure that I mention that on this episode. And I have mentioned that in other episodes in my YouTube videos and also on my podcast. But I just want to make sure that I mention that here
yeah.
because it comes, when you are on in that high and when you are having that moment of love and all of that, your brain emits dopamine, and
Mm,
that is the hormone of addiction. That's what happens when you're playing these video games or you're playing the slot machine or whatever it is.
yeah.
That comes out, and when you are in love. And when that person is coming at you and you're talking about being soulmates or you're talking about knowing each other in a different lifetime or whatever, your brain is like dopamine, 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 and it's dumping that, at a massive rate. And it's like, they've actually measured it and it's higher than levels of cocaine at that time. And
Wow.
that's why when a narcissist or somebody like that ghosts you all of a sudden and says, I'm not going to call you right now, or they go from 100 texts a day or whatever it is to like zero, and why are you
Mhm.
being so needy, and I can't come right now or whatever it is. And now your body is like reacting to that, and now it's like cortisol, the stress hormone,
Yeah.
now your body is literally craving that person on a physiological level.
Mm.
So you actually become physiologically addicted to that person. And
Wow.
and that is why it is so hard to break that trauma bond.
Mm.
It's literally one of the hardest things to do in your life.
It's so interesting that you're saying that because I felt exactly that. And I'm glad you're bringing this up because obviously what you're saying is much more clinical version of what I was saying. But I felt like so he would be here with me and then he would go back to where he lived in a different state and the communication would go down and it would just be a couple texts a day. I miss you, thinking of you. And I would get so excited hearing that, right? And then but I would want more. I would want to know what he was doing and if he was, like I would want to talk. And that was not at the beginning, that's how it was. And then it really wasn't. So I was like aching for like more and more and more. And when I wasn't getting it, I was, a week in, I would have a conversation like, am I feeling something weird here? Is there something wrong? No, no, no. I want this. I really want. So he would separate himself and it would make me, try to get him even more and then which would probably push him away by the way and then as soon as it was just this back and forth but you're right that it was these feelings of aching for him to like respond or to need me to or it was just ridiculous and that terrible feeling you can't sleep at night sometimes you're like wondering when you're going to get the next text or hear from them or if you did something wrong and that's not a way for anyone to live. It was terrible. I didn't even know this person. So it was ridiculous how your brain can do that.
Yes, exactly. And so, but like you said, if it's an even thing, if it's, and there's actually a study by the way, on this, it's Robert Sapolsky and you can look it up. And he did a study on monkeys on this and, that's the study that I'm referencing. So,
Mm,
and if the study on monkeys was like, if they rang the bell and they did it every single time and they knew when they were going to be getting this treat, nothing happened to the dopamine levels in their brain. But if they didn't know when they were going to get the treat, and it was intermittent, and it was just the anticipation of not knowing when
Yeah.
they were going to get the treat. The dopamine levels in their brain rose to the level of cocaine.
Wow.
And yeah, so it's the anticipation, it's the not knowing,
Mhm.
it's that hot cold, it's that push pull. And
Right.
so what you were saying was like those even relationships, the ones the it's the nice guys, right?
Right.
That
Well, the
nothing
empathetic
happened.
ones, the ones that want to communicate with you and see, if you are feeling like there's a lack of something going on, they're willing to talk about it and figure it out as opposed to kind of thrive on that and be like, oh, good, I've got her where I want her. So I think it's obvious when you're in a healthy relationship as opposed to when you're not. When you're not, it feels uncomfortable and then feels amazing and then feels uncomfortable. But I don't think with healthy relationships, it's like that. I mean, I
Right.
don't know.
So
I haven't had very many.
right, but it's just a matter of retraining your brain
Yeah.
to not need to crave that dopamine and just look for the even and be okay with that.
Yeah.
Because, most of us who are craving that whole high thing, it's because we did grow up in unhealthy, homes like what you were
Homes.
talking about,
Mhm.
right? And so
Mhm.
it's healing yourself and feeling that wholeness and feeling that worthiness in ourselves and knowing that true, authentic, higher version of ourselves and knowing that you're worthy of that. So I thought, what you had said was so beautiful.
Yeah. And it's so, by the way, it's so obviously, as you know, because you have a whole show on it and books on it, but, falling for these kind of relationships and being in these toxic relationships, it's very common. It's very hard.
Mhm.
We're all damaged in some way. So it's
Yep.
hard to get to the work and the place in life where you can identify it, where you can have these boundaries easy. I mean, it's work to put yourself first a lot. I think that's what we should all strive to remember when we're in the throes of giving ourselves away because we are so passionate about being in love. And that goes back to the love addiction. It feels so good, but it also feels terrible when it doesn't work out. So, and it's interesting on my show, Misunderstood. I've done a number of episodes on relationships, on narcissistic abuse, on all that kind of topic, because it is a relatable topic that almost everyone has been touched by in one way or another. Either they're one or they're dealing with one, whether it's a parent or a spouse or something along those lines, or in a job situation.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Well, I mean, it's such a huge part of the population, right?
Yeah.
So, knowing who you are, seeing the signs, and, being able to, that's the first step. And
Yeah.
so, for you, now that you've seen the flags, now and I think that you've really conquered a lot of it because look at you. I mean, you've been able to say, "Hey, I know what I want. These are my boundaries. I'm good with I'd rather live a full life on my own than be in a relationship that's not serving me."
Yeah. Well, that was distracting me. That's a word I kept using. I kept thinking I'm distracted. I can't focus because I'm too busy like looking at my phone. Like when is this person going to call or make a plan with me or and yeah, no, but as I just said, I haven't had many good relationships to use as an example, but I think the work is in the trying and the shorter the experience is, cutting off 2 years of your life wasted with someone who is not the right person because of narcissistic tendencies or whatever it may be. It gets shorter and shorter. And I am at the place where I've done enough work and I'm happy enough. And it's so hard to find your purpose and get to a happy enough spot. But when you do find that, it's great to have the right boundaries because the right person will come along and it's better to be alone and not distracted by the wrong type of thing or person than it is to waste your time and effort. I mean, I feel even though, a couple days ago, I was like, oh my God, this is really hurting me. This is upsetting. That's ridiculous. I'm not hurt. I'm not that upset. And I've noticed that I'm completely back on track with everything that I'm doing. And I'm not even thinking about it. So it was just what you're talking about, the cortisol, the dopamine, the adrenaline, whatever it was. And I needed to get through it for a second. Now it was like a drug went out of my body and I'm fine now.
So proud of you. Okay, so what is narcissist baiting? And this is part of an overall series of all sorts of 101. And I've helped many, many people over the years by helping them in my law practice, through my courses. And if you want a free way of helping yourself respond to emails, text messages, or just even write those difficult emails or text messages, or even talk to narcissists, I have a free tool for you. It's 15 key phrases for disarming narcissists. You can get that at disarmthenarc.com. So go ahead and grab that. So baiting is a technique that all narcissists use to provoke a reaction from their, I'm going to say, victims or targets. It is a way to get people reeled in. And what they want is that hit, that high. And, we call that narcissistic supply. It's a way of feeding their ego, feeding that need that they have to feel validated, to feed that black hole inside of them that makes them feel powerful, that makes them feel like they matter. They don't have any internal sense of value. So they get all of that need, that feeling of value served from external sources. And baiting is one of those techniques that they use to serve that. So they provoke a reaction from people by doing things. So they'll send an email out there that they know is going to annoy you by saying something that they know is not true, or they know is going to be inflammatory, or they know is going to upset you, or they'll say things that they know is inflammatory. They purposely stir things up. And the goal of it is to get you to be angry, to get you to respond to them. And then they do it for a number of reasons. They do it because they think it's funny, because they enjoy seeing you upset. They get a high from it. But beyond that, it's even worse. They also use your reactions against you. So they'll say, look, there's the crazy person. There's the one who is delusional. There's the one who shouldn't have the children. There's the one who is psychotic, should be put away, or whatever. They often are the ones who have the ability to stay calm and not react and look the part of the normal person. And oftentimes, if it's marriage counseling or something like that, they are able to sway the counselor into thinking that the other person is crazy, that they're the ones who are the calm, normal ones. Or they can sway mediators into that, or they can sway judges into that. There was that mini series called I Care a Lot, where the guardian was able to get the aging people to look like they were the ones who were crazy and get them committed so that she could take their money, because she would whisper in their ear and make them look like they were crazy, on camera. That's baiting, like getting people riled up. They use all sorts of forms, such as insults, name calling, threats, silent treatment. There's a number of different forms that they'll use. But the most important thing that you need to remember is, if you find yourself getting baited, not to take that bait. Because, they're almost like fishing, and then they start reeling you in, and you're like with the fish with the hook in your mouth being pulled into it. And you don't want to be that, because the purpose of it is to evoke that reaction from you. And it can be dangerous. I say, when you're in a case with a narcissist, it's like being arrested. Anything you do or say will be used against you. And it makes them feel powerful, and it makes them feel in control. It can often lead to verbal abuse, physical abuse. It empowers them. It's very, very important for you to remain in control. And that's why I said, go get my 15 key phrases at disarmthenarc.com. Start with that. Try to communicate with them in a respectful way. Consider leaving the relationship if you need to, but don't allow them to take that control from you. Say, I'm in control. And I want you to put that in the comments right now. I'm in control. I'm in control, because I don't want you to allow them to take that control from you. I'm in control. So put that in the comments right now. I'm in control. Okay? Don't allow them that power. Okay? 8 ways to outsmart that controlling narcissist. By the way, I have a brand new book, Slay the Bully: How to Negotiate with Narcissists and Win. It is literally in pre-order right now. I have tons of free bonuses for you. Go to slaythebully.com, grab it. All right. Number 1, what's the one thing they want you to do? What's the one thing they want you to do? They want you to take their bait. Why do they want you to do that? Well, because they go fishing. Boom. Reel you in. So don't take their bait. Okay? Do not take their bait. Why do they want you to take their bait? Because then they feed their ego. They feed that need inside of them for supply. So remember, they don't feel inside like they have any value. They literally have to get all of their value from external sources. So yes, it's how they look to the world. Yes, it's ego. Yes, it's winning. Yes, it's adulation. Yes, it's all of those things. But it's also by controlling people, debasing people, degrading people, manipulating people. That's also a form of supply for them. So when you take their bait, when they throw things out there to try to trigger you, that gives them a high. It literally, they get off on that. So when they send you these long emails, these long texts, these long things, or something through their attorney, or something that they know that is going to trigger you, and you go right in with them, they've really got exactly what they want. And then now you're sucked into the mud, you're sucked into the quicksand with them. But it's even worse than that, because not only are you giving them narcissistic supply, number 1, you're giving them what they want, but number 2, they use your emotional reaction against you. So if you are in any kind of a situation where either you are in a potential court case or negotiations of any sort, or you could be down the road ever, they will use it against you. Okay? They will say, look, there's the crazy one. They sit over there, calm, cool, collected. Not one bead of sweat has ever touched their brow. And you look like the crazy person. And they use your reactions against you. One of the greatest examples of this is in the mini series, I Care a Lot. I did a whole video on this, where the woman who was the caregiver of these elderly people went up to the other woman, the elderly woman, and whispered in her ear while the camera was playing. She would get these elderly people to become like her wards, right? So if she was their guardian, then she would get control of their money, and she would basically take their money. right? And so she would get them in front of the judge and have them declared incompetent. She would put them into these nursing home facilities and she would get control of their money. So when there was a hearing coming up for this woman's capacity in front of this camera, she whispered in front of the camera all sorts of things to get her upset. I'm going to do this, you're this, all sorts of things, whispering quietly. And the woman like went nuts in front of the camera and looked like crazy person, insane person who basically needed a straitjacket, needed to be restrained. The other woman, the caregiver person, was like, oh my gosh, look at that. Wow. Ugh, it's terrible. This crazy old elderly person who is obviously doesn't have her capacity. So she literally took her bait, hook, line, and sinker. And that's what happens with narcissists. So, and I did a video on that, which you can check out if you'd like, but that's what they do. And it doesn't have to be in that kind of situation. They can say, you're a deadbeat dad or a horrible mother, and you can sit there and say, what are you talking about? I just picked them up from school, I just fed them their snacks, I just took them to baseball, or whatever. Are you kidding me? I just paid child support, whatever it is. And then you're down into it and you're in the thick of it and you're in it. Don't take that bait, because you don't need to prove anything to them. They are not the judge. They are not the jury. Okay. They are not the person you need to prove anything to. So who cares what they say? Don't take their bait. That's number one. Number two, don't engage in conversation with them or in any conversations that are emotional or argumentative, or any conversations about the past. This is another way to not take the bait, but really to outsmart that controlling narcissist. Because again, they're going to try to drag you into these things, but don't talk about the past, because that's something else that they're going to do. They're going to get you to talk about something that happened 20 years ago, if they can, especially if you're trying to call them onto the carpet about something that happened now. If you are going to get them to be held responsible for something today, they will definitely try to project and deflect about anything else, because they don't want to be held responsible for something that's going on now. So they're going to try to do anything they can to get that conversation off of that. So don't engage in that. Don't start getting argumentative. Don't get emotional. By the way, I have phrases for disarming narcissists, which you can download. It's totally free. Go to disarmthenarc.com. Highly recommend that you grab that. Disarmthenarc.com. Don't engage, don't get emotional, don't get argumentative with them. Total waste of time. You're not going to convince them of anything. They're not going to go, oh, you know what? I get it now. I see what you're saying. Oh, yes. Now, you know what? I was wrong. They're not doing that. So what are you doing? Just stop yourself. All right. Set boundaries, stick to them. That's the next one. Set boundaries, stick to them. You know what I say? Step one, don't run. Step two, make a U-turn. Step three, break free. Remember what's negotiable: contracts, issues, terms. You know what's not negotiable? Your self-worth, your self-esteem. All right. So step one, don't run. That's where you're putting your boundaries into place. Step two, make a U-turn. Step three, break free. Okay? Avoid confrontation as much as possible. All right. Next one. Don't try to change them. Don't try to fix them. Don't try to change what their beliefs are. Don't try to get them to acknowledge anything you did or anything that, your accomplishments. Any kind of conversation like that is a waste of your time, your energy, your good life on this earth, your breath. All of that creative, wonderful energy that you have is just better spent doing other things on this planet. You can say things to them like, I agree, that's what you think. Or you can say things to them like, that's an interesting perspective. Just say things like that just to keep things flowing. The next one is remember that your self-worth, who you are, has absolutely nothing to do with them. You are whole and complete, and it has absolutely a separate value from who they are. Your self-worth does not depend on what they say, what they do. And the more time that you spend giving them and thinking about what they're doing is less time that you have to create and be the highest version of yourself. So, that was one of the massive, huge aha moments that I had when I was extricating myself from a narcissistic relationship. I realized that every moment that I was giving to this person, I was in victim mode. And so I needed to stop. So, do what you need to do to get out of that relationship, and think about it when you have to, when you're strategizing or creating your leverage or whatever. Remember my SLAY methodology: strategy, leverage, anticipate, and focus on you. So when you're thinking about it, think about it. But any other time, you got to be in create mode. Give yourself the gift of being the highest, best version of yourself. Think about something else that you can pivot to that is going to keep you in creation mode. Is it going to be writing that book that you've always wanted to write? Is it going to be helping people? Is it going to be coaching people? Is it going to be devoting your life to something that you've always wanted to devote your life to? Your children, is whatever it is, you got to pivot into something else, because your self-worth, all of that has nothing to do with them. They are broken people. And so however they've been toward you in the past has nothing to do with you. Okay. The way people treat other people is a direct reflection of the way they feel about themselves, good or bad. They've treated you poorly because they don't feel good about the way they feel about themselves inside. So you can't take it personally. The next one is stay positive, stay upbeat around them. Let them know that you're like Teflon, just let it fly off. Or like a duck's back. It just, rolls off of you. Because as long as they think that that's what's happening, then they'll start to be disinterested, because you're not taking the bait anymore. You are calm, you're not emotional, you're happy, you're not interested in giving them supply anymore. And the less and less all of that is interacting, then they're going to be very much surprised. So step 1, don't run. Step 2, make that U-turn. Step 3, break free. So you're literally turning this around so that you're no longer backing away. You're no longer on the defensive. You're turning around, you're walking forward. You're now on the offensive. And that's how you start to stand in your power. And that's how you start to break free. So I want you to put in the comments right now, I can do this, because you can do this. You absolutely can. All right. The next one is you maintain your individuality, you maintain your independence. As you start to break free, as you start to become powerful, as you start to become confident, you will start to see yourself as separate. You will start to see yourself as something different, and you will start to see that power coming underneath you. That's when you start to see that wind coming underneath your wings. Be prepared for drama, be prepared for manipulation, because they won't want to see that supply source coming away from them. You know, narcissists are always the worst right before they're ready to give up. It's like a toddler having a tantrum, you know? I mean, it's as that baby is being kind of conditioned, they get worse and worse and worse. So be prepared for that drama, trauma, and chaos. But you can do this, right? You put that in the comments already, right? I can do this, because you can. All right. And lastly, get that professional help that you need, right? So you will need help. You will need support. You will need a support system. Make sure you join my free private Facebook group, Narcissist Negotiators with Rebecca Zung. Join that. You will need help. You will need support. You will need a support system. You get professional therapy. If you don't have access to it, we do have a partnership with BetterHelp. You can go to betterhelp.com/Rebecca Zung and get that online support therapy if you need access to that. We receive commissions. It doesn't cost you any extra. We just want you to have the help and support that you need. Make sure you subscribe to this channel as well. We want you to make sure that you have everything that you need. I'm here providing free resources for you every day as an attorney, helping you negotiate with narcissists, helping you communicate with narcissists every single day. Remember that you have a voice. You have a voice. You have a right to have a voice. You have a right to speak your truth. Today, we are diving into a really fascinating topic, and it can be really a challenging and emotionally draining topic for those of you who are trying to desperately reclaim your power, and especially in high conflict situations, you're trying to navigate them, you're trying to negotiate them, you're trying to communicate. This is where I thrive, because I'm trying desperately to help you, right? I want to see you turn that around. I want to see you get your power back. And I have a certification program where I train coaches on how to coach people on this. So it's a very, very crucial topic. So narcissistic fallout, 4 types of dissociation. It's what happens for people when they get so emotionally drained. And understanding these types of dissociation can help you reclaim your power and navigate these high conflict situations with confidence. Dissociation is a common response to the trauma that is inflicted by narcissistic abuse. It's the way we start to cope. It's our minds helping you. It's our minds saying, let me protect you. Let me help you with this stress level and this emotional pain that you've been dealing with. All right. So I'm going to break down 4 different types of dissociation that you may have been experiencing during and maybe even after the fallout. And stick around till the end, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some practical strategies to manage and overcome the dissociative states that you've been dealing with. Okay. The first type of dissociation is depersonalization. And so this is when you feel like almost like you're detached from yourself at this point, like almost like you're not even there. And you're observing the interactions from a distance, and you're almost like not even like yourself anymore. Like, who am I? What's happening? I don't even know anymore what this is. I've seen people in this state, like in helping them, and it's so difficult to see people in this almost like robotic state. You're detached from your own emotions, your own reactions. You're going through the motions. Like, oftentimes people say, I'm just going through the motions, without really kind of truly connecting to what's happening. You're at a family gathering, and maybe a narcissistic family member starts to criticize you harshly. And instead of feeling hurt or angry, you just feel numb. Just things are just like bouncing off of you. Like I tell people to put like this invisible shield down around them, but it's not the same thing as that invisible shield. Because when I say to people to do that, there's like a control aspect to it. There's like an agency aspect to it. Like you are aware that you're doing something and you are taking affirmative steps. This is almost like you're just there. You're not taking any steps. It's just like, okay. If you can relate, just give me a totally in the comments or an amen in the comments. The next one is derealization. This is when the world around you feels just like unreal or like a dream-like state. Like this is where people say, I'm living in a fog, and everything just seems sort of distorted or strange. Like you just might be like walking through your own home, but it feels foreign, like you're in a movie set. And instead of reality, the furniture or the rooms even feel odd or out of place. You're just seeing things like sometimes you don't even recognize things that you should be recognizing, right? Your work and your boss starts to berate you in front of your colleagues, and like the office feels surreal, and colors seem out of place. Maybe sound starts to feel muffled. It's like you're moving through a dream, because like sometimes this kind of disconnection can almost feel kind of terrifying if it can get that far removed. You can actually start to question your sanity when that happens. Okay. The next level is dissociative amnesia. And this is where you actually can't recall important information about yourself, about events, about like you can't remember where you put keys. It's like losing chunks of memory. And like what happens is you have so much cortisol going on in your brain that it actually shrinks your hippocampus, and you just actually start to not be able to think clearly at all. So like for example, after a heated argument with a narcissist, you find yourself like not being able to remember significant parts of the conversation. This is really a defense mechanism. It actually shields you from emotional pain. It's the same thing as when somebody's like in a car accident or something, and they actually can't remember huge chunks of the car accident. Like you might remember parts of the experience, but you don't remember big details of it. Like you might recall feeling angry or sad, but you can't recall like exactly what was said to trigger the emotions. Like an example might be like at a social gathering or a meeting, like you're asked to talk about it and you realize that you have no memory of it at all. Like somebody might say something that you did or said, and you realize that you can't remember something that happened like recently, and it can be kind of troubling. All right, so the next one is identity confusion or alteration. And this occurs when you feel uncertain about who you are. This is like where you completely lose your sense of self. And this is when you've had prolonged exposure to narcissistic abuse, and you might feel like you've lost touch with your true self. You are like adopting traits that you don't even recognize yourself. Maybe you're trying to appease the narcissist. You might start questioning your own values. You might start questioning your own interests. You don't even recognize your personality. I mean, I had a client, a one-on-one client one time, who was literally getting sick. She was in the hospital. She was actually like completely losing her sense of self from narcissistic abuse, until she was able to extricate herself from that situation, and now she is a completely different person. Her name is Nicole, and she often talks about how my slave program completely saved her life. I think that this is where prolonged exposure can really, really be so toxic. So, you know, you might find yourself like maybe dressing differently or speaking differently or engaging in activities that you might never have before, just trying to fit the mold of the narcissist. I mean, I've seen people do sexual things that they have not wanted to do and all sorts of things. And it really can send people into a sense of complete and utter confusion and despair, and it can be really, really horrible. So, I mean, if this is you, there is help out there. Get the help and support that you need. Certainly, if you are in danger or anything like that, please, call your local shelter or the domestic abuse hotline, or certainly call the police if you need to. Get the help and support that you need. If you need counseling, get that. Join my free private Facebook group if you need it. Now, what can you do? Grounding techniques, staying present, grounding, touching nature, putting your feet on the ground can be really, really helpful. Just any kind of touching of nature, splashing water on your face, naming 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can touch, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things that you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. That like anchors you in the here and now. It's like things that you can do that like grounding you into your senses. That's a really good thing that gets you back into your present moment. Mindfulness and meditation. Regular mindfulness can be really, really good to reduce dissociative episodes. Apps like Headspace or Calm are great tools for this. Just spend a few minutes each day focusing on your breath. Let's talk about why narcissists dish out that ultimate punishment, or what that ultimate punishment is and why they do it. So, first of all, let's talk about the beginning of the relationship with a narcissist. So they start off at the beginning of the relationship, basically conditioning you. So they are testing you. They want to make sure that you are going to be a good source of supply. So they start off obviously with that love bombing stage, as all narcissists do. They're, making sure that they are looking perfect to you. They're very good at reading people, so they know how to present themselves as being absolutely perfect. They have that kind of chameleon quality of themselves to present themselves to be absolutely amazing to whoever it is that they need to do that for at the beginning. They can't hold that very long. It's like it's not a natural state for them. So they need to get progress to the next level as quickly as they possibly can. During this phase, they're really testing you. They're grooming you. They want to see what your weaknesses are. They want to see how quickly they can get to the next stage. They're conditioning you. They're starting to imprint you. So they want to see how much they can get away with. So they start dropping these little things to devalue you, to see what they can get away with. So you'll start to get these little barbs. They'll say things, or they'll start to ghost you a little bit, or they'll start to do things, and just to see, like, are you going to do something about it? Are you going to stick around? Are you going to let them get away with it? You'll start to see that gaslighting. You'll start to see the ghosting. By the way, if you want to know more about what the gaslighting phrases are that they use, you can definitely check out my video on narcissistic gaslighting phrases. I have a whole video on the actual phrases that they use, which I recommend that you check out. They start to have their flying monkeys. They start to be passive aggressive. I definitely saw this with the business person that I had to deal with. I had a covert narcissist that I had to deal with in a business type of a setting. And I definitely saw this passive aggression kind of a thing. And it was like very, very confusing. And why do they do that? Well, because they want you to be confused. I had a client one time who referred to it as scrambled eggs for brains. And, they don't think about this consciously, but when they are doing that, they're basically destabilizing you. They're basically reprogramming your brain to make you think that they are the powerful ones, that they are the one in control, that they're smarter than you, that they know more than you, even though they attach themselves to you because they kind of felt like you knew more, that you had more power, that there was something great about you. But then that gives them power to actually be able to manipulate this person that they thought had power. It's like really, really effed up, but that's what they're doing. They do all of this because this confused, destabilized person is actually much more easily manipulated now. And so now you're going, when the relationship starts to collapse, and you're going into, that last phase of the relationship where you're no longer going to be in relationship. Now you still think this person has all this power. And I just want you to remember that a lot of times when you're thinking, oh, they know so much more, they're so good at everything. A lot of times when you're thinking that, when you think that they're so smart or they're so great, a lot of times it's really just the imprinting that they have caused to happen to you. They're programming on you. I just want you to know that, because they're trying to have your own sense of self removed. And a lot of times, depending on how long you've been in relationship with this person, it's worked. I mean, how many times have I've worked with people where they've said, I don't even recognize myself anymore. This is not who I am. This is not what, how I used to be. I didn't used to feel like this about myself, but, that's what happens. So when the relationship comes to an end during this kind of discard phase, they really want to hurt you. And why? Because they want to make you look bad before you can make them look bad. They want to punish you for leaving them, or even if they're leaving you, they still want to punish you. Because, with a narcissist, it's you're either for them or against them. It's all very black and white with them. And if I'm right so far, and you know that I am, give me a so right in the comments right now. Just, slip me that so right. All right. So what are their ultimate punishments? Anything that they know is your Achilles heel, anything they know is your weakness. If it's a divorce situation, it's going to be your kids, or, anything that they know is that one thing. So number two is anything they know that you want. So if you've said, I want this, then they're going to make sure they go after that. I mean, that's what happened with me. I had this sort of business relationship with a particular person, and I had mentioned, oh, I definitely want to make sure I maintain a certain thing. Well, that was the one thing that she made sure that, she went after. That was one of my mistakes. This is before I realized I was dealing with a narcissist, by the way. After this relationship, that's when I started learning all about narcissism and started teaching on it. And, I knew all about negotiations before that, but, now I really know all this stuff. Number three is anything they know you love. Again, Achilles heel, anything they know you want, anything they know you love. Number four, what's an ultimate punishment? Continuing to make you as miserable as possible. They get supply from that. So remember that. Don't give them that satisfaction. That gives them supply. And number five is, what is an ultimate punishment they love to dish out, is that they are extremely vindictive. They have no shame and they have no remorse. So those are the types of things they like to do. Why do they do it? Because it gives them narcissistic supply. Everything they do is because of narcissistic supply. And in other videos, I talk all about how you can cut off their supply. And that's my whole Slay program is all about that, and creating that leverage and how to ethically manipulate the manipulator. Shopify helps millions sell billions around the world through their digital courses, through their digital products, at the touch of a button, on their smartphones, on social media, however they want, including me. At shop.rebeccazung.com, you can access your store from all over the world, just a touch of a button from your smartphones. Start accepting payments. Everything you need to sell online, manage orders, and develop relationships in one place, and look fabulous doing it. Shopify is the commerce platform that is revolutionizing millions of businesses worldwide, including my own, at shop.rebeccazung.com. So right now, what you need to do is sign up for a $1 a month trial period at shopify.com/bestlife, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/bestlife to take your retail business to the next level today. Shopify.com/bestlife.